cinnamon butter in there.
The quality of roll that you get from Texas Roadhouse, the quality of mac and cheese is literally Kraft, but with bootleg government cheese. Okay, that's what you're getting with the mac and cheese over there. Speaking of government cheese, that's kind of what I felt like I was being fed today, listening to Patrick Dumont talking about why they made the move to trade Luka. And look, I'm sure some of you have probably heard it in some form or fashion today. Obviously, it's been played a couple different times here on 105 through the Fan throughout the course of the day on different shows. Excuse me. This was played, or excuse me, this conversation was had at some sort of real estate event that he was at, where he was a speaker at, on February 13th. So this is a month old. But the comments were finally released, or excuse me, footage of the conversation was finally put out today. And I want y'all to, again, pay attention to what he had to say. And then we'll find the Nico audio from when he talked about why the trade was made and kind of compare and contrast between the two. This is Patrick Dumont, owner of your Dallas Mavericks, a month ago, talking about the Luka trade 2 weeks after it was made.
How did you frame a decision of such magnitude like this?
So, tough decisions are never easy. And part of leadership is looking at risk and looking at all the factors of a decision and being willing to act at that time and look to the long term and not only think about the short term or how it may be received immediately, but to think about the long-term benefits and what it may allow you to achieve if given all the right considerations. And I think for us, going into the trade deadline last year, we were not competitive. If you recall, we were not a playoff-bound team. And we were able to do some things to reconstruct the roster and enable the team to become very competitive. And after the trade deadline last year, we actually had the best record in basketball, which was a big accomplishment. And we got to the championship games, and we didn't win. And so we had to decide, how do we get better? What can we do to improve our team? And so we looked at our trajectory during the season and realized that we did not get better. But the teams that we competed against, some of which we beat, did get better. And ultimately, when you look at the Eastern Conference, after we were to get through the Western Conference, if we're so fortunate, you would have to beat some very formidable teams, including one that we lost to, which actually got better. So this was a decision about the future. If you look at our roster today and who we have, we feel like we position ourselves to be incredibly competitive against the best teams in the NBA. And if you're a fan of basketball, I'll just throw that out there, you have Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, Anthony Davis, and either Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively as your starting five. That's going to put fear into a lot of teams in the league if we can get going.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Right? And so the objective was, how do we create a roster for the future that allows us to be the most competitive team? I've said it all along. I don't know if you heard what I said when we actually bought the team from Mark, but we want to win championships. We want to be a winning franchise for the city of Dallas, and we want to be one of character, one of community involvement.
All right, so that was...
I took some notes.
Yeah, so that was Patrick Dumont. Go ahead and get... I've listened to this probably 3 or 4 times today. I want to get your initial, because this is the first time that you and I have chit-chatted about it at length, your initial thoughts from what you heard.
So first of all, whoever's interviewing him sounds like a square, and the person talking is a square.
He's a real estate guy.
So there's 2 for 2 on the square rating. First thing that pumped out to me was the use of the word long-term, which I think is hilarious. That was the first glaring thing. I wrote that down. Next is he said he wanted to look at risk when talking about why he made this trade. So then points again to him.
Wanted more of it, apparently.
Looking again and saying the risk of Luka was one we did not want to deal with. The next note I wrote, how do we get better? So apparently he thought going to the NBA Finals was not good enough, that he's trying to figure out how do we make this team better. And then he talked about how other teams got better, and he talked about specifically the Eastern Conference and specifically the team that beat you. Did the Celtics change their roster on the top 8 players that play in the finals that I missed?
That's the million-dollar question, because when he kept saying that everybody got better, I'm thinking to myself, like...
Are the Knicks your problem now? The Knicks are the only team to kind of overhaul.
I was going to say, because unless you meet them in the finals... some people have already said Minnesota got worse when they got rid of Karl Anthony Towns.
People said Denver got worse.
Denver,
KCP.
Denver gets rid of KCP, and outside of adding Hartenstein and Caruso, which they did to beat you,
and then you beat them without them,
and then you've beaten them without Luka this year. So, and you'd already beaten them twice, if I'm not mistaken, three times.
3-1
before that trade went down.
So I didn't really get that. He talked about a decision about the future and pointed to the starting five. And he said, how do we create a roster for the future?
Yeah.
I think if anything, and I feel crazy for saying this, Nico's got more of a leg to stand on with saying, hey, this is a short-term thing, and selling that to the fans of like, hey, short-term, we think this team is better right now. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it has more of legs to stand on than, hey, our team's better in the future. I don't even know, even though the Will Chambers of the world, like they're on that side, I don't even know how you rationalize that we're better in the future. With Clay and Kyrie and AD, those are your three best players I just named that are all going to be in the future. It's not tomorrow. That's probably, I think we can all assume, at least 3 years when we're talking about the future. At least. I think most people would think when you say future 5 to 10, but we'll just even be on Patrick Dumont's side and just say the minimum 3 years. There's no way this team's better in 3 years with Clay, Kyrie, and AD being 3 years older.
No. There's nothing. You don't plan for the long-term future around dudes in their early to mid-30s in the National Basketball Association.
So unless he thinks Derek Lively and Max Christie are going to be your 1-2 punch leading you to NBA Finals and winning championships, he made it very clear, winning championships. He didn't say just to be competitive, hey, we've been missing the playoffs, we just want to make the playoffs. He said winning championships. So based on this theory, he thinks Max Christie and Derek Lively are going to be the two championship pieces. There's only young guys that get minutes.
Who I'm not even convinced he probably understands Max Christie's on the team. This is the same guy who said we went to championship games and lost.
Championship games. Yeah, this is very business person just looking sport. We went to championship games.
This is the same guy who's, again, and if you read his profile, he talks, it says that he's been an NBA fan his entire life.
And he also speaks about we want to build a team of character, one of character. So I think that was another shot at, they didn't think Luka was the right guy behind the scenes.
If you, listening to the way Patrick Dumont talks about Luka, you think Luka was out in the streets. You think Luka was Ja Morant. All right.
And James Harden mixed together.
And James Harden and Anthony Edwards all rolled into one.
Yeah.
With a little bit of Chris Herron sprinkled on top because he might be waiting for his dealer outside the arena before a game. That's the way it feels when you listen to Patrick Dumont, who doesn't have a lick of basketball sense when you hear him talk. And I tell you what, for a guy that's a CFO and now the CEO of the Sands, I'll tell you what, it makes you wonder a little bit. This is what Nico had to say. This was the very next day after the trade, the less than 24 hours after the trade was made that Sunday.
Well, I think the long term is the time frame. I think he fits our time frame. If you pair him with Kyrie and the rest of the guys, he fits right along with our time frame to win now and win in the future. And the future to me is 3-4 years from now. The future 10 years from now, I don't know. I don't think they probably bury me and Jay Button or we bury ourselves.
Yes.
And there's the nervous laugh that nobody was laughing with him, and you could tell. What Dumont's conversation and first of all, you can tell they're not even aligned on how they want to
terminology.
Okay,
yeah.
You would think that this would have been aligned at least a little bit better than what it was, especially when you consider that if you're Dumont, Nico laid it out for you that Sunday. All you had to do was basically parrot everything he said, and no one's going to know be any the wiser. All right, because my guess is that whoever was at this real estate, which by the way, those mics.
Is there people cleaning dishes?
I was going to say, my God, can we bust the tables a little bit quieter? My goodness. Anyway, so that said, you've got two conflicting narratives. You've got Nico saying the next day, which I'll tell you what, it actually I'm going to tell you right now, and I never thought I'd say this, but this really tells me that this was not a Nico decision to do this.
Maybe
I'm telling you right now. I don't think. Look, I'll tell you what it feels like to me. This was the Dumonts, who clearly don't. They're running this like a corporation. Okay, we've heard one of the things, and I think it was and it was Broadus we had on like that following week or whatever it was on one of the weekend shows we were doing. He talked about how this was reminiscent of him, or it reminded him of with Nico being a Nike guy, that it was a very corporate approach and how kind of callous and cold they went about doing it. I don't disagree with that, but I don't think it came from. I don't think the call to make the move was from Nico. Okay. I think it was a combination of, and oh, by the way, and we'll play the audio later and I've got so many different ideas, and I'm circumlocuting right now because I want to get this right. He says in another part of this conversation that Mark Cuban's a family friend. They've known him for years. Okay, so this is the guy you bought the team from, and you're going to tell me that you didn't. And again, his first line: tough decisions are never easy. I mean, if that's not brilliant, I don't know what is. So, but in that 2-minute mishmash of just, word salad and a guy that pretends like he knows basketball but he really doesn't, and there's nothing really fast and furious as far as what he's really saying as to okay, this makes sense as to why you did that. I believe that this goes hand in hand with whether the NBA was involved, something along the lines of, look, we're not going to pay him. We're not paying Luka.
Same with Grimes.
Okay. Well, the Grimes thing was ancillary, right? Because and I think there is truth to the whole, maybe Grimes said something after the Luka trade, right? Because everybody, we saw the way the locker room was after that trade was made. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. The only time that you ever see locker rooms that quiet is after a big loss.
Yeah.
All right. Or if somebody gets fired. I mean, the way Clay looked, I don't think Clay looked that shell-shocked after losing the finals 3-1, okay? But you've got so many different themes and narratives that are you've got the NBA saying they didn't know anything. You've got Mark Cuban saying he didn't know anything. Your own Mavericks team can't even say the same thing when it comes to why they wanted to get rid of Luka. And then when Mark Cuban does come out and have his little, I sat down with Channel 8 to get the scoop, and his only thing was, I would have gotten more. I mean, really? That's the line you're going with? You would have asked for more? So never mind you. So you were okay then, Mr. Basketball, who helped bring basketball back to Dallas, and you said you'd get divorced before you'd get rid of Luka. So you're going to get on TV and insult an entire city that's reeling from this, and your only comeback is I would have asked for more. Mm-hmm. Really? That's the way you go about doing your business, Mark? And that's the big conversation that we all waited for till 10:30 to hear? Come on, man. So I'm telling you right now, the more this keeps coming out, and again, other people have said this. You want us to stop talking about Luka? Look, I'd love to stop talking about Luka. All right, but every time somebody from the Mavs starts talking again, at least, hey, I'll say this about Nico. At least Nico's shut up. Nico gave his awkward press conference on that Sunday, and we haven't heard hide nor hair from him since.
Yeah, he's been hiding.
Okay, he's hiding in tunnels, in between fan bases. Like, Nico wants no part of it. All right, and I just wonder. I wonder if Nico, and again, I can't believe I'm saying this, if Nico is more or less just the bag man in all this, and is the face and taking all the arrows, doing the dirty work for the Dumonts in the NBA.
And it keeps going back and forth. This is why 30 for 30s are great. We all yell at Nico. It's what you would think, and then it's really Dumonts, but maybe it's really Cuban, maybe it's really the NBA, and you just keep backtracing and adding stuff together, and I think you're onto something, Fred.
And the only reason I'm going to say it is, and we'll get on to the Cowboys next, and what Tank Lawrence had to say on the way out. It doesn't make any sense for Nico to make. I mean, we were talking about how he might be one of the best 5 GMs in the NBA. His first 3 years in Dallas, the master class he put on,
and he also traded everybody around for Luka. All the pieces he got.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's it. Like, you built. I mean, you're going to tell me, Nico, who's been around basketball his entire life, okay, Mr. Mamba mentality. And oh, by the way, we've said this time and time again. Who was one of Kobe's favorite players before he died? Luka. Mm-hmm. All right, very well known. Google it. Find out for yourselves. So suddenly, for a guy that was raised under this Mamba mentality, couldn't go to Luka and talk to him. And then suddenly he's pulling this nonsense about how, hey, we can only go to one person. There's just too much there. Dare I say, Nico's too smart of a basketball mind to do this on his own. Okay, I find it very hard to believe that a guy who was Kobe's right-hand man woke up on January 7th and said to himself, "We got to get this guy out of here." I mean, he was. Kobe, for God's sakes, was going to the finals during a rape investigation, and you're gonna tell me that we're worried about Luka for doing too much hookah? Really? That's too much? But you got a dude who we know what he did in Colorado. But for Nico, that's too. But hookah's where he draws the line. Come on, man.
It's not adding up.
No, it doesn't add up to me, and I'm telling you right now, dare I say, I feel like Nico's the fall guy in this. The more I listen to, I'm telling you, the more I listen to Patrick Dumont, the more I believe Nico's the fall guy in all this.
They're gonna make your words the intro for the 30 for 30.
I'm telling you,
I think Nico's the fall guy.
I really do.
They're gonna put the date up and everything.
I really do. And I hope I'm proven right on this. Nico, you got an open invite to the show. You got an open. If you want to spill the beans, and if it's weighing on you, you got an open invite here right on Fan After Dark.